Hello, boys and girls. It's story time with Mr. Merasco. I'm here today to share with you one of my stories. This one's about Michael Jordan. We'll get to that in a few minutes. Last week, the helmet challenge was this one here, and Audrey Dennis and several other people returned the correct answer, which is Coastal Carolina. The Chanticleers, I believe their nickname is, the Chanticleers. So congratulations on those who answered that one correctly. This week's helmet challenge is this one. They are a member of the Big Ten Conference, located in Indiana. They are a university. They has really good basketball teams. Football teams were good 60s and 70s. They've had a few good years. Drew Brees, the quarterback for the New Orleans Saints, played for this team. So let's see how many people can correctly answer who this helmet belongs to. Some of you asked me about my shelf and some of the items that I have, keeping in mind that I have been a Notre Dame fan since I was 5, just a little kid. I've collected many things over the years. Just a couple of my favorite ones up here on the top shelf are autographed footballs from the 2000 and 2001 football team. Fond memory, I took my kids down there and the kids all got their autographs, and it was cool meeting the players. I got an autographed football of Charlie Weiss and Brian Kelly. They are addressed to me. Some of the different helmets here are helmets from the Shamrock series that Notre Dame plays in annually. This was from when they played in the Boston Shamrock series. This one here was in Indianapolis. So those are kind of favorites of mine. I have one of my favorite coaches, Lou Holtz statue. What else do I have in here? Joe Montana, famous quarterback that went to the University of Notre Dame, tree ornament. A stadium brick from the original stadium. Kind of one of my favorite pieces. The last Heisman Trophy winner for the University of Notre Dame, Tim Brown. I actually met him once. Super great guy when I was in college. I also have a variety of magazines that I collect. They have Notre Dame on the cover. This one goes back to 1956 with Paul Hornung. Some people have heard the game of the century between Notre Dame and Michigan State, 1966, Sports Illustrated. Notre Dame versus Michigan. This is when Rick Meyer came back and led Notre Dame back against Michigan. The Rocket Man had 2 touchdowns against the University of Michigan in 1991. Kind of a cool one, 2012, kind of on the cover. Love the gome and the reflection of touchdown Jesus in the helmet. Here's an old one of Eric Parzigan in Time magazine, 1964. Here's another Time magazine, 1966. There is a 1948 Frank Leahy on the Time magazine. I don't have that one yet. Too expensive for me for right now. So anyway, those are some of the things that I have collected that go on my shelf. It's been kind of a talking thing that when I have company, and this is kind of where I hang out in the fall watching football games. Story time. Over the past few weeks, ESPN has been doing a documentary on Michael Jordan, arguably one of the greatest basketball player of all time. So I thought I'd share a story with you about Michael Jordan before he was famous. This was written by his mother, Dolores Jordan, and his sister, Rosalind Jordan, illustrated by Kadir Nelson. This is called Salt in His Shoes, keeping in mind that this is when Michael Jordan was probably your age, 3rd, 4th, 5th grade, maybe younger. Salt in His Shoes. I'm going to move my chair a little bit closer. Michael loved to play basketball. Every Saturday he followed his older brothers, Larry and Ronnie, to the park, hoping they would let him play. And if one of the guys who usually played with them didn't show up, and they always did, they would allow him to play. But there was one problem. His name was Mark, and he was the tallest boy on the court. "What's the matter, Mikey? Are you too short?" Mark flapped his arms in Michael's face. "Over here," shouted Larry. But when Michael threw the ball, Mark's long arms came out of nowhere and knocked the ball away. It flew into the hands of a player on Mark's team. He made the basket, and the game was over. And just like that, they had to go home. When they got home, Michael went to the kitchen where Mama was cooking dinner. He was so upset and disappointed, and she could tell. "You guys lost again, huh?" And Michael nodded. He sat quickly for a moment and then said, "Mama, how can I grow taller?" Now, Mama knew the answer to a lot of questions, but this was a tough one. She thought for a moment as she sprinkled salt and pepper on the chicken she was making for dinner. Then she smiled and looked at Michael and said, "Salt." "Salt?" said Michael, looking at his mama. "Salt in your shoes. We will put salt in your shoes and say a prayer every night. And before you know it, you will be taller," she replied. "Salt in my shoes," Michael thought. Surely Mama was just teasing. He sat staring out the window, trying to figure out how salt was going to help him grow. He noticed the rose bushes outside Mama's garden. They had grown high along the fence, and the roses of all colors were blooming on the vines. And he thought to himself, "I remember when Mama first planted those bushes." And Michael's face grew and lit up. If Mama knows how to make those rose bushes grow taller, then maybe she's right. Maybe salt in my shoes really will make me grow. Growing more excited, Michael twirled around and started asking lots of questions. "Mama, how long will it take? How tall do you think I will get?" Smiling, Mama sat down next to him and explained, "In order for this to work, the most important thing you have to do is be patient. And listen to what I tell you. And be sure to say your prayers every night." Listening careful, Michael shook his head. "Okay, Mama, I'll be patient. But what does saying prayers have to do with it?" he asked. "Everything," Mama replied, and she hugged him. "Now go wash up and tell your brothers and sisters to get ready for dinner." Michael dashed out the kitchen, almost knocking over his father, who was talking and walking in. "What's he up to now?" asked Daddy. "Oh, the usual," laughed Mama. "Chasing a dream." Later, during dinner, Mama noticed that Michael was barely eating anything. He was already dreaming about being taller. By the way, I am too. "Michael, first things first. You don't grow if you don't eat. Especially your vegetables," Mama said. "But I'm not really hungry," he said. Raising her eyebrows, Mama gave him a stern look. Slowly, Michael picked up the fork again and began to eat. Minutes later, the plate was clean, and he was asking for more. That evening at bedtime, Michael set his favorite game shoes on the floor next to the growth chart, hanging on the wall. Then he put on his pajamas and said prayers and jumped in bed. When Mama came in, Michael was fast asleep. By the look on her face, she could tell he was already playing basketball in his dreams. Standing by his bed, Mama sprinkled salt in his shoes. Then she prayed quietly over him, as she did with all of her children. Dear God, please help Michael to be the best he can be, and give him the best in all that he does. And Lord, could you please make him just a little bit taller tomorrow than he is today? Thank you. Amen. After that night, Michael wore his favorite game shoes everywhere, even when he went to church. And he stopped going to the park with his brothers on Saturdays. Instead, he stayed home and he practiced. And he practiced a lot. He wanted to grow a few more inches before he had to go back to the park, though. After 2 months of practicing and waiting patiently and praying, Michael stood next to the growth chart on his wall. Nothing had happened. He hadn't even grown an inch. He was disappointed. But he did not stop believing. I've just got to give it time, like Mama said, Michael thought to himself, and that's what he did. 2 months of practicing went by, and still no growth. Now Michael was becoming a little bit sad. Not only had he not grown an inch, but he also missed played basketball with Larry and Ronnie. About the only thing he didn't miss was being picked on by Mark. When the next Saturday came, his brothers tried to get Michael to go with them to the park, but he wouldn't budge. Mama had begun to worry. When she saw Michael sitting alone on the steps, she said to Daddy, "Maybe you should go talk to him." So Daddy went out to talk with Michael. "What's wrong, son? You haven't gone to the park with your brothers for a while. Are you okay?" Michael didn't say anything at first. Then he looked at Daddy and said, "I thought I would at least be a few inches taller by now. I did everything Mama told me to do, but nothing's happening." "Michael, why do you want to be taller?" Daddy asked. "If I was taller, I would be a great player, and I could help our team win," Michael answered. "But you are a great player, son, and you already have everything it takes to be a winner, right in here." Daddy tapped on his chest. "Being taller might help you play a little bit better, but not as much as practice, determination, and giving your best. Well, that's what's important. Those are the things that will make you a real winner." Michael thought about what Daddy was saying for a minute. Then suddenly he jumped up and took off. "Where are you going?" Daddy yelled. "I've got a game today, and I'm late," Michael yelled back. When Michael reached the park, the game had started. He sat on the bench hoping he would get a chance to play, and he did. The game was almost over and the score was tied when John, one of the guys on Michael's team, fell and hurt himself. Here was Michael's chance. Michael joined the team in the huddle as they gathered to the sideline for a timeout. "All right, boys, the game is tied. All we need is 1 point. Who wants to take the shot?" Ronnie asked. He looked at Michael's direction. Feeling more confident than ever, Michael said, "I want to take the shot." When the whistle blew, the game began again. Mark began to pick on Mike as usual. "Still trying to play with the big boys, huh?" Mark taunted. But Michael paid no attention. Taller or not, he had been practicing. And today, he was determined to win. Larry threw the ball inbounds to Michael. Michael caught it, bounced it for a moment, and then he took off running. As he approached Mark, Michael shifted his weight to the right. Mark followed. But while he was shifting, Michael spun to his left. He stepped behind Mark and shot. The ball arched far above the opponent's hands and fell silently through the hoop. 2 points. The game was over, and Michael's team had won. It was just as if Michael had dreamed it. When he realized what he had done, Michael took off running and didn't stop until he reached home. If anyone ever saw Michael Jordan's last shot in 1998 by the Chicago Bulls, pretty much describes the shot he just took.
Bursting through the door, he shouted, "I did it, Daddy! I did it! I shot the ball right over a tall guy's head, and we won the game!" Running in behind him, Ronnie and Larry joined the celebration. "That's right, little brother, you did it. You've won the game for us." Michael remembered the look on Ronnie's face gave him during the last time out of the game and said, "No, we won the game, but I was the star." And they all laughed. After that day, Mama stopped putting salt in Michael's shoes. But Michael did not stop being patient, working hard, and praying. So that must be what made Michael grow and be a 6'6" tall basketball superstar. Michael Jordan. Salt in his shoes. Next week's story, which will be my last story of the year, we're going to read about a famous baseball player named Jackie Robinson, the first African-American baseball player. Boys and girls, have a great week. Thank you for joining me. Have a good day.